Are we live?
We can assume that we are.
We are live. Yes.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi,
Hello,
everyone.
everyone. Yeah, please
Hi.
go ahead, sir. Yes, please go
I
ahead.
would just say, before Vijitha ma'am takes over to start with the discussion of the VARC section, we'll be doing it in the same uh,
Order.
sequence that we do for the CAT. I'll just introduce the panelists. Of course, every one of you has seen Vijitha ma'am on the videos that she makes for SimCAT solutions. So along, I will be sharing responsibility a little bit with her for discussing the VARC section. For the DILR and QA sections, there is Pavan sir and there is Vipul sir. They will be taking over the discussion of the DILR as well as QA section. So starting off with the VRC section, over to Vijitha ma'am, please.
Sir, I'm sure we can start with your insights on VRC. What did you think about it?
Oh, so compared to CAT 2024, I was in slot 3. I found the RCs to be more challenging. VA was doable. Ek aad question was difficult. Like, for example, there was this reference to some Kantian, some logic somewhere. That was one passage question. I think it was question number 24 in my slot. That question, given the paucity of the time and then the complexity of the language and the sheer length of the passage, that I found in the VA section to be challenging.
That
Otherwise,
that was the para completion, I think, right? Para completion question. Yes. Huh.
so that was challenging. Otherwise, the parajumble, the odd sentence out, they were fairly doable. One summary question was such that I thought, apart from one option, none of the options not didn't even make much sense.
Hmm.
So by the process of elimination, you could have read the answer to that. Ma'am, what did you think of the RC section?
So I agree with you when you said that it was definitely slightly more difficult than CAT 24 slot 1, because that's what we are comparing this to. So definitely more difficult than CAT 24 slot 1, maybe generally CAT 24. I'm going to keep aside CAT slot 3, okay? This was more comparable to CAT 23, I would say, in the way, the kind of RCs that appeared, the density of the language, etc. What I thought was it wasn't very difficult, right? So CAT 23 also, it was quite possible for us to attempt 2 to 3 RCs. You could very easily pick RCs. So I would say that yes, while VA was on the easier side, you could probably rely more or get a higher score from VA. I would still say that RCs also could be easily done. I mean, you had the first RC that could have been chosen, and that was the first one in my screen, at least sectional, at least. That was the cave fish, right? The tetra fish that got to adapt to living inside caves and therefore lost. It was an evolutionary adaptation. Now, I thought that was a very easy one, descriptive, information based. The questions were also fairly straightforward. The options were shorter. So definitely the easiest one, you could actually finish that in very less time. There was that one question as we were discussing a couple of minutes earlier, the which one would invalidate, there was a scientist mentioned his argument or his findings, which was a little tricky, but you could still manage that. I thought the second pick should have been the AI biases in ChatGPT. That was a very relatable RC2. The text was extremely easy. Slight argument of the author, but you could still do that. However, even in these two RCs, what might have made you go slower is, I think, that specific question that appeared, one particular question. It's not a specific question per se, but a new question stem, which asked you which of the following options would go against this idea or would support this idea. And all of the options were picked from the passage. They were statements picked from the passage. Now, I thought that was really new because we've not seen something like this. There have been one odd of questions here and there, I think, in the last few years. but it hasn't been a irregular question type. In fact, one of the questions was worded as which one of the following statements is an odd sentence? So there
Yeah.
were four statements picked from the RC, and which one is an odd one in the context of a certain discussion. So these things I think would have slowed down students slightly, but considering that the text of both those RCs were easy, you could definitely manage that. You maybe had to spend a little more time with the second RC, that is the AI biases one. But I would rate the third and the fourth RCs pretty much on similar levels, which is the one to do with literature and the place, the role of place in literature, the insights that it gives. It's not just a backdrop. That was the opening sentence. It had more relevance. Now, this was quite argumentative. You had to follow it very closely. The questions were also slightly critical reasoning based, main idea based. In fact, even that new question stem I thought was main idea based. Without knowing what is the main argument of the author, you couldn't figure what the odd sentence is there or which one doesn't agree with the idea. Even the fourth RC in my sequence was that to do with science and the culture and scientific practices that it promotes, depending on the access it has to knowledge and the instruments available, etc. There was this slightly unusual question there which spoke of which of the instruments mentioned in the passage
Correct.
can be equated with, right, there was an oven and all these
Except
things.
it was
Yeah,
an except
except
question.
question, right? So plenty of except questions, right? In terms of complex stems, I think there were a couple of them. I distinctly remember there was one that said none of the following would be inconsistent with the passage except. So there was that complex stem. Certainly, there were a few complex stems. Another unusual thing that I found was something that asked us to draw an observation, identify an observation from a conclusion. So there was a mention, I think that was in the fourth RC, the science RC, if I recall correctly. So the first two RCs could definitely be taken. Out of those eight, there was only one tricky question in the biases RC, I thought, which might have taken you a while, or you might even want to let go of that. And then maybe the third and the fourth RCs, you could either choose one of them. The literature one, for the ones who can relate to, the science one would have taken you some time. But surely, trying to get to 10 to 12 questions for the ones who are well practiced, for our students who are so well trained and have done a lot of SIMCATs wouldn't have been a challenge. So I certainly feel about 8 to 12 questions, depending on your speed and depending on, how many RCs you usually do, could have been done very easily. And yes, the VA was a boon, of course. I thought there was this extremely simple parajumble, Manav sir. Do you remember that? Four sentences, two easy pairs.
Yes,
Extremely simple that was. Yes.
one parajumble was, it appeared towards the beginning of the test for me. So that was a very, very nuanced observation that you made about AI being mildly argumentative, because that passage, he never comes out and says that AI is doing this. He says AI seems to be. So he is argumentative, but in a very benign, in a very subtle way. So that passage, as Vijayta ma'am said, that passage was doable apart from a question or so that you might have skipped. And for me personally, the passage about sciences, I kind of zoned out a little bit there, and it took me like the second
Long
read.
paragraphs also.
I left it after reading it halfway. I zoned
Mm,
out. I left it. I moved ahead, solved some more questions, and then came back to it. But even then, I was not able to solve all the questions.
mm, mm.
I solved 19 questions.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
so I definitely, like, normally as no, not 19, 20, 21. Sorry, I solved 21 questions. So normally I solved 22 or 23. So this time I thought, compared to 24, I found it the RCs to be more challenging.
Slightly difficult. Yeah. They weren't very long, though,
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah. They
you
were.
have to
Yeah.
scroll down three times to read the end of the passage, and that was also. And if you remember, ma'am, a few of our SIMCATs had very long RC passages. a lot of students came to me and they said, "Sir, why are you doing this?" I said, "Well, it is Sujit sir who's doing this. So, we'll ask Sujit sir." But then it worked out just for the best because students were used to reading lengthier RCs.
Mhm. The second one wasn't. The AI bias passage was a very short one, but yes, the others could have been a slight little longer. Yes.
And do you recollect that two of the questions in the science and tools and progressive science, two of the questions looked very similar? Do you remember that?
Not currently, sir.
Which
No.
had the same options from
Ha,
the passage.
ha.
Two of the questions looked very, very similar to me. And like I did a double take. I went back to the previous question and I
Hmm.
said, "Arey, is it a repetition of the question?" But I agree with ma'am.
Do
What
you
ma'am
do you
said.
recall the question stem? No, I'm also not able to
I,
recall.
I'm not. But two questions seem very similar to me in
I,
that.
th- uh,
And
so
I
I think
agree
all in
that
all, we can easily say that this was easy to moderate, and uh, I think our analysis also has been pretty much on those lines that we could easily attempt about 18 questions, 16 to 18 questions maybe, and manage to get a 12 to 14 correct, right?
that
So,
with the help of VA, that number was
exactly,
doable.
exactly, yes.
Even if you skip one RC
Yeah.
and a couple of questions here and there, you could still
In
manage
fact,
to
in the odd sentence questions also, both those questions had clearly two pairs emerging. So if you could figure out those two pairs, you easily identified the one that did not pair with any. So that was again very easy.
yes,
All right, sir. I think students might be waiting to
for
understand
here,
something
yes.
more from the vast experience of Pawan sir and Vipul sir too. So maybe we can go on to one of you.
Yeah, I mean, before we
Nishant
start with the
sir has
DLR
also joined
discussion,
us.
I would just want to ask you, according to you, what was the answer to that scalpel milestone question? Because I'm sure it would have stumped a lot of test takers. I spent good 2 to 3 minutes on that and ultimately couldn't decide which one to pick.
Which
Which
one,
one?
sir?
That road, milestone, scalpel, and microwave oven. I
So I
remember three of
went
the
with,
Ha,
options.
ha.
I was discussing with Sujit sir, I went with milestone
Okay.
because the distance does not change. Whether
No, but we
the
can have
two,
more accurate measurements. That is the whole point they were making is that with technology coming in, measurements are becoming more and more accurate. So earlier, the milestone might have measured the mile incorrectly, and now we might have a better measurement. In fact, all of them need precision, whether it is microwave oven temperature or I think scalpel might be something that
that
doesn't
was the
really
two
need that
options
kind
that
of
I was
precision. I'm not
stuck
sure.
between.
So that
I,
that is one question that would have stumped a lot of test takers for sure. And which one was the most difficult passage according to you? The one that should have been ideally left out.
pick
I
anyone between the two of them.
Yeah,
Either
both. So someone who doesn't really relate to literature might have found that challenging. This was a little dense. The science RC was a little dense because of the long paragraphs also. They were really long. So for you to hold on to that idea was a bit of a problem. But in terms of questions, I think both passages had fairly challenging questions. So you can't really say that one of it was most difficult. For instance, last year you had that one passage that stood out as very difficult. But in CAT 23 also we had something like this. Two passages were pretty much on the difficult side without, one of them standing out as very difficult. So I think this is quite similar to that, sir.
So I think that across all the three sections, the difficulty level and the pattern also we can say was quite similar to something between 23 and 22. If it
We
was
could say
not
that,
as
yes.
difficult as 23, then it was definitely more difficult than 24 and probably closer to 23 than 22.
I
I'd
agree.
say that, yeah, closer to 23 for sure. Because even while I was going through the RCs, the question types, this is what came to my mind. Of course, there were a few changes, but this is what came to my mind largely.
Okay, so DILR, as expected, there were 22 questions. There were five sets, very, very similar in terms of pattern. But obviously, as we had predicted also, last year's DILR turned out to be far easier than what CAT is normally known, the difficulty level that it is known for. This year, we knew that they are going to restore the difficulty level. So it was along the expected lines. We all knew that, but knowing it is one thing, and then Going and attempting it is another thing altogether. So despite the fact that we knew and we even got the feedback, when you are in the, under that pressure situation, it definitely gets to you. So again, see, CAT is never really known for very difficult questions as such. So it is not like we can't solve, but picking up that right question, and looking at the questions, looking at the 5 sets, selecting the right set, having that confidence that you'll crack it and not juggling between sets, that needs a lot of expertise, I would say. And it was definitely very challenging in today's DILR section as well as quant. So, Vipul sir, what is your take on the DILR section? How many sets do you think were doable for somebody who had prepared well and sincerely written the mocks? And what, according to you, would be a good score in DILR?
So what I personally feel is nothing but, as you mentioned, that if I compare it with CAT 24, obviously, yes, it is tougher. And if I talk about, there were few questions. I mean, the pattern was obviously same as the what we had in the 2024. So therefore, no surprise that in that. But yes, there were more theta questions this time. That was one thing which was there. Second thing, if I talk about the paper, so there was one set which I found, like, I mean, there was one set, if you can recall, that there were 6 balls and 4 hoops, H1 to H4, and then some data was there. So I think that data was nothing but, I mean, if you actually spend little time, you are able to at least solve 2 to 3 out of those. That's what's one. Similarly, when you talk about a set where they were talking about that Guru Bhai wala thing, which was a set of where you are supposed to make a 4 Venn diagram or you pen down that data. So in that, I think 1 to 2 questions should have been done easily because of the thing that they've mentioned that, right? Overall, if I talk about, and similarly, if I talk about, if you can recall that one DI set was there where they've given you from 16 to 20 to 24. Again, some data was there. The
It's kind
range
of
is
a
there.
scatter diagram.
Yeah, scatter
So one
diagram.
thing that we have noticed in the 2 slots, and I think that would be true for the third slot as well, is that they are trying to bring back some non-traditional graphs. Because the
Yes.
first slot had a radar chart, which is
Hmm.
not asked that frequently, and we had a scatter diagram, which is again not asked that frequently. So we had a bar graph, which was not actually, it was actually not a bar graph set. It was more of a Venn diagram set, the research papers one. But
Yeah.
they had presented the data in the form of bar chart. And then we had a Ratat one also. And then this sustainability index one,
Hmm. Hmm.
which was a scatter diagram, right? So quite a few graph sets.
Yeah, they've changed it.
Um,
Like earlier, there used to be only one. I mean, if I talk about last year, but this time they've given you 2 basically. So I think they are more or less balancing those DI and LR, I would say. I mean, that could be the thought process, or the extrapolation could say that. I would say that.
I think the set selection was more of a challenge rather than the set themselves, because I have talked to a few mentors, and whichever set they have attempted, like for example, you said the hoops set just now, and you said that it was easy.
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
attempt it.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't attempt that set. So the problem was the set selection, because all the sets seemed difficult. There was nothing like easy pickings, which was also true for the quant section later on. But first, let's just talk about DILR. So I attempted that Venn diagram wala set, and I think that was easily doable in 8 to 10 minutes. That research, that authors who are publishing
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
papers and all. Similarly, the sustainability set that you said, once you just got a hang of the the diagram there, I think it was just percentages, nothing
Yeah,
else.
doable.
So it was not that difficult. And then this arrangement set, that Guru Bhai and that musician set, slightly tricky, because there were 1 or 2 clues you had to be very careful about.
Hmm.
You had to interpret the condition that every guru had trained all the, all the students, and then for different time span. And this condition was mentioned in the common data.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this
Hmm.
was not mentioned in the condition. So if you did not read the paragraph properly and you missed out on this, you would make up the entire table, and then you will have to redo the whole thing because you wouldn't find the answers in the options. So it was slightly tricky. But all in all, these were, I think, doable sets. So somebody who had prepared well, sincerely, didn't mess up because of the time pressure and all, could have answered, I think, 1.5 to 2 sets easily. So I think the 85 percentile, the cutoff should be around 1 set. If you attempted 1 set and got all the questions correctly, all 5 questions or 4 questions, 4 might be slightly less. So I
Less.
think the cutoff may be around 14 marks.
Hmm.
So if you
Hmm.
went
Hmm.
for a five question set and attempted all the questions correctly, you should be able to clear the cutoff.
Cut off.
2 sets should take you somewhere close to 95 percentile. if you have 100% accuracy. Otherwise, 2.5 sets with 1 or 2 wrong answers should take you to 95 percentile. 99, I believe, would be more in sync with the CAT 22 value. So it would be definitely a lot less than CAT 23. Sorry, CAT 24. So it should be around 29 marks. CAT 22, 99 percentile was around 29 marks. CAT
Yeah.
23, it was 27 marks. So I think it should be 2 to 3 marks more than CAT 23, but round about the same value as CAT 22, definitely not the last year's values.
Yeah,
which
last
were
year
pretty
paper was
high.
actually very easy. I mean, if you talk about
Yeah.
last year, it was like 39 was the score needed to get 99 percentile. This time, I would say very, very close to 30. It could be like, I mean, as you mentioned, one less or one more. So 29 to 31 is nothing but a ballpark figure that we can assume that should be very close to 99 percentile.
And in comparison to CAT 24, as we already said, that this was far more difficult. But if you have to, pick one particular CAT paper in the last 3 to 4 years that, which matched in terms of difficulty level and probably also in terms of cutoff, then which one? 22 only? We have consensus over there? Or you have another?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it will be, as you mentioned, that between 22 and 23 only. I would say just take a arithmetic mean of that and we'll get that basically. I would say very, very close to that.
Okay, Nishant sir is also here. So, Nishant sir, what is your take on the DILR section?
So I actually personally found this time it to be a trap, because all the sets that you were reading you were able to understand, but it was once you start doing it then you find it difficult. So that hoops or a set was actually a very easy set. If you could have given 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, though, then you'll feel that I'm moving in the right direction. So it cannot go wrong. But it was a problem that that set was meant to look difficult. The answer options, comparisons, and all. So yeah, it was a trick set. Then the percentage set, x-axis, y-axis, sustainability. It was doable set with a little calculation. If someone is good with numbers, basic percentages, then he should be able to solve it. So these two sets I find okay. And yes, it was definitely difficult than last year, because last year, whichever set we were picking, we were trying that and that we were able to solve, but this time it did not happen. We had to select between the sets. Okay, it is taking more time. Yeah, it was close to 23, I would say. 22, 23 के बीच में Vipul sir said take the arithmetic mean, but I personally felt it was close to 23. This is what my take on LRDI.
And how difficult was that pollution index set if you attempted that?
Unfortunately I could not reach that set, so I actually read it
Vipul
later.
sir, did you attempt that set, that pollution index set which had multiples of 10?
No, I did not do that. I just did that hoop wala set. Then I did that scattered wala. Then Guru Bhai wala is something which I did. And at last, I just did that where the bar graph is there, set of 4. So I did around 3.5, I would say close to 3 set, but did not manage to reach there because when I read it, I just found it might take little time because I'm not able to understand in the first go. So I thought better is not to do it.
There were a lot of cases in that. That was a pretty time-taking set.
So that means I was lucky just to not to do that in that time.
Language was
I
also
suppose
very
so, because
complex.
we, of course, obviously later on we are going to solve it again, and probably
Yeah.
we might have a better way of solving. But during the test conditions, that seem to have a lot of cases. So should we move on to the quant section then?
Yeah.
Just a moment, sir. Can I ask you a question regarding
Yes.
DILR before we move on? So what do you think about the presence of 11 theta questions? Was that seen last year, or is the number higher this year?
Numbers definitely higher. We have never really seen 50% of the questions being theta questions.
Theta, isn't
And
it?
in DILR, that raises the difficulty level, that the bar is raised, because many a times what happens is you crack half a set and then you use the MCQ options to understand
To
the
work your
remaining
way
half,
around.
plug in the
Absolutely.
values. And when all of them are theta, you don't have that option.
Correct.
You have to solve, and if you have missed out on any cases, you can't even understand that because there are no options to reflect
check
that.
it. Yeah.
So it becomes more challenging, definitely. And because of that reason also, just because of the higher number of theta questions, the cutoff might fall even more by 1 or 2 marks.
In fact, one of the sets had 4 questions, 4 theta questions, the NUR set, I think.
Yeah. All
that one
questions were
had.
theta in that.
No, it was a set of 5 questions,
Five
but
questions.
4
One
of
of
them
them
were
had
theta.
options.
Yes, yes.
Even those options were something like, I think, which of these cities are definitely a part of the same state, something like that. So unless and until you have figured out everything, the options are not going to help you.
Right.
So it was definitely more challenging than 24 for sure, and this is what we had predicted also.
Also,
In all our
isn't it?
mocks
Yes.
also we had already considered this fact that it is not going to be as easy. So instead of calling this as an aberration, I think CAT 24 DILR
Was an aberration.
Was an
Yeah, yeah.
aberration.
This is the
Yes.
norm.
In a
This is
lot
the
of
norm,
senses,
right?
I think even in terms of VARC, CAT 24 could be considered a slight aberration because the RCs were really easy. The options were really tricky, very close. In fact, quite contested also. 2 or 3 of the options, answer options were very much challenged and contested by students and, generally the community. So yes, you're right. Okay, even
One more
VARC.
change that I observed, Vijita ma'am, in the VRC section is in the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen that passages have become interesting. The options may be difficult. The scores might remain more or less the same, but passages have become interesting. So even if you are not a verbal mentor, not a verbal person, you can read them. But I think this year the passages were slightly more technical or on the drier side. They were not as
2
interesting.
of them were, yeah. But the AI one was the biases of AI. That was, I think, interesting. The argument could be followed. Right. Yeah, that was nice. Yes. But,
Also, what has happened in the last few years is that science, technology, and even book review type of passages have been quite consistently featured on the CAT. Last year was
very
one
true.
CAT where there was no book an extra
Discussion.
book featured. But otherwise, last year in my slot, there was, how AI poses an existential threat to humanity, whether we should sterilize the space probes that we send to Mars and all. Very, science tech, bio, and they have continued that. We have had AI, we have had that puffer. What was that fish wala? And
Cavefish.
yes, that was also science based. AI was also kind of science based, and that science and technology was purely science. So, and that the fourth one was literature. So, consistent themes that they have come back to in this year.
But I think, Mano sir, that makes it slightly easier for an average reader, because if you compare it with, we had one passage on, I think, British folk music in one of the previous CAT papers. That was a
2021,
nightmare for people who
21.
are not into music. So I think compared to that, this is still far better.
True.
I, in hindsight, I liked that passage. अच्छा लगा था वो.
But during the test, did you like it?
I did not, but I managed to answer the question. Obviously, Jose also had the same slot, and Jose was also quite voluble in his, when he gave feedback on that particular RC. So that was a very tricky RC. Compared to that, in the same year, that is what Jitham and I were talking about. Then in the same year, there was this how the topography of a land affects humans that live there, which was very similar to that
2019. That
passage
was
that came.
2019, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
2019.
Yeah. So that those two passages were very, and this one about literature and land, this was also very similar to that passage about topography. So those two passages are similar, but for British folk music, obviously remains the benchmark.
True.
Okay, so should we move on to the discussion of
To QA, yeah. I
Students have
think
been
there are
eagerly
students
waiting
who
for
are
that.
talking about the answer to some question in the pink set. So maybe you can look at that, sir.
Which one? Which one, ma'am?
So someone's asking me in the pink set, was the answer 12 or 13 to
I
one of the
didn't attempt
12 or
questions?
13 is
that.
right. 12 or 13 is right. I did that.
Okay.
So that's the correct, basically.
MCQ question of that some other set is being talked about. I don't know. Out of slot 1 and 2, which one was more difficult overall? Overall,
No,
I think
we have taken only one slot, right? All of us have
yes.
only written one slot. So
But
first hand
going by,
experience,
I
obviously,
think going by the analysis,
the previous feedback, we
yeah.
can say this was slightly more difficult.
Yeah. If you're just comparing this year's slot 1 and slot 2, I think his question has to do with that.
Yeah.
Pretty similar, I would say, sir. Maybe the shock factor might have been there for slot 1,
No,
particularly.
the feedback that I have seen from the previous slot mentors, based on
Ah.
that, we can say that this was slightly more difficult, especially in
DILR,
quant.
sir? DILR?
Especially in quant.
Acha.
Okay. And otherwise, see, we have only written slot 2. We haven't even seen slot 1 questions.
Exactly, yes.
So we can't really comment.
Yeah.
So should
Maybe
we
we
move
can.
on to quant now?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Pansal, please,
Yes,
please.
So quant, somehow I did not really find it very easy. I was surprised because at my center, a lot of the students saying quant was very easy.
Oh.
So I don't know whether it was easy for them or not, but as a mentor, it wasn't easy for me. We definitely try to solve it the same way we tell you to do it, which means we go for easy questions first. The first question that I picked up was the 7th question out of 22, and I got stuck in that. So even that didn't turn out to be very easy. I left it at that point of time and then I came back to it, which means overall the difficulty level may or may not be very high. But the fact is that there were not too many easy pickings in quant. There were very few easy questions. Yes, there were a few questions in arithmetic. There was a time and work question. If you know the LCM method, that was pretty straightforward. There was an income expenditure ratio question, which was very, very simple. There was a percentages question, which was quite easy. So there were about, I think, 5 to 6 questions, which were very much doable. If you have even prepared your basic syllabus, well, you could have got those answers. But beyond that, it was challenging. And the presence of so many algebra questions, with a lot of them being theta, that makes it even more challenging. So there were a lot of algebra questions. There was a question from logs. There was a question from functions, which was asking for domain. Now, functions question is a regular feature in CAT. Almost every slot has a question on functions. But generally, they are easy questions where you just substitute the values and you get. They are not really asking you for domain and range and the period of the function, these kind of things. So I think they asked domain after a long time, if I remember correctly. So there was a question on logs, which was again not a difficult question to solve, but the way they had framed the question, I think somebody who's not very good at logs would have probably not touched that question. So overall, I found the section to be difficult. Before I just talk about what according to me could be cutoff clearing numbers and good numbers for 99, let's just listen to what Vipul sir and Nishant sir have to say about the quant section. So Vipul sir, what is your take? How do you think that how difficult was it?
I mean, I was just about to writing, I am able to recall those 20 questions out, which actually came here in this paper. And obviously, yes, I mean, there were somebody, if I talk about the pattern, obviously 8 to 9 were arithmetic, which we have been giving in all our mocks. So almost on the same line when it comes to arithmetic is concerned, but they removed that permutation combination, if I talk about, or maybe the probability question was not there in that. That was a change.
From
Plus,
modern math, I think there were no questions.
yeah, no, not even a single question from PNC and probability. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So, but then what they've done in nothing but in algebra, they make a question dense. Now, as you mentioned that the question of log. So in log, they've applied the concept of, I would say, AMGM also, where you're supposed to identify what is the minimum value of X plus Y plus Z. So I think, I mean, when you look at these questions, obviously, automatically you will say, okay, yeah, this is something which I cannot do at this point. And therefore, rather better is nothing but to bank upon or rely on those questions which are of arithmetic. And thank God there were 4-5 questions in arithmetic. One was, as you mentioned, that time and work wala question, which was pretty straightforward question. Then there was a question on averages, which was given the average of first 7, then 8, then 9, and then the average was. So that was pretty calculative, I would say. Took around 2 to 3 minutes, I mean, to solve it. But then if you are able to keep your nerves under control, that was doable. Similarly, then there was a question on boats and stream. So standard questions were there. Then there was a question, I can recall it, which was from, as you mentioned, investment to expenditure ratio was given. But I mean, what they have done is nothing but instead of giving for a same person, they've given for the other. So people actually found that little tough to actually visualize it, how we can do that. Right. Similarly, when you talk about, I was able to write down, there was a question which looks easy, but I did not do that. I spent around 2 minutes. I hope, I mean, Pawan sir, you did that or not, I don't know, where it was written 16% coffee, the cost was 240, then 36%
I did
coffee.
solve that. That was equation, simultaneous equation, but it
Two
was time
equations,
taking.
and then the third equation also we need to make it. So I found I spent around 1.5 minutes. I said, nahi, ye to nahi karna hai mujhe abhi. But good part this time was nothing but when you talk about the Bose stream question, where it was given then 14 kilometer, you just make an equation, then plug in the integral value. I mean, fortunately, the moment you put 1, you were able to answer that. Similarly, there was one more question which was there. 3AC equal to, if you can recall that, 8 into A plus B. So that was also, I mean, if you're good with numbers, you could have done it. But
there were
overall,
quite a few questions of this type. There were almost 2 to 3 questions which were not very calculation intensive, I would say, but which were trial and error questions. What is the
Exactly.
maximum value this can take if these are integers? Something like that.
True,
So
true,
I
true.
think that for an average test taker, unless and until they practiced a lot of questions of those types, those questions were like untouchables. They would have
Exactly
not
right.
really
I mean,
got into those questions.
because if you get into making equation, obviously, then it is horrible. Like, I mean, you have to leave it. I mean, so I would say overall difficulty level, obviously, yes, it is. It is, I would say, much tougher than what it was last year, because last year, I mean, the questions were all, or most of the questions were straightforward, which were there. But here, I mean, I would say around 4 to 5, yes. But otherwise, a good taker, I would say 8 to 9 question is something that you would be able to find in the first half an hour. And then it all depends upon how much you can keep under, like, nerves under control, and then you could have done it.
The major problem is this only, that because you encounter one easy question, then you come across 2 difficult questions, then you pick up the 4th question just because of pressure, and then you get stuck in that. Because of that, children are not able to pick up those 5, 6 easy questions also. There were 5 to 6 easy questions, but it was not difficult. They were, dispersed all over. It's not like they were collected at one place. So in my on my screen rather, because it is not slot wise anyhow. The first arithmetic question I got was, I think, 7th or 8th question. It all started with algebra, and algebra, I think there were
Yes,
no easy.
Pawan sir, your and mine screen was same, because I also started getting questions after 7th, 8th question. Till 7th, 8th, I was thinking why. I mean, I am not able to pick any question till now. Then after that, I found 5, 6 questions of the arithmetic, which were straightforward kind of question, doable questions. And yes, it was difficult. Like last year, where people were able to solve 10, 12 questions easily, I don't think this time they'll be able to solve 10 questions, if you compare it with that.
Even,
So,
the difficulty level of VARC being almost at par, or maybe even slightly more difficult than last year, and DILR definitely at least 25% more difficult than last year. I think that would have also had a effect on the con section. So
Because you carry
already,
that burden, actually. You carry
yeah.
that burden of the first 2 section, and therefore sometimes the easier question you're
But
not able to.
Vipul sir, it's so easy to advise, but it is not so easy to follow. As a mentor also, did we not carry that baggage? We knew that we have messed up the DLR section. So we have to look for easy questions in quant, and we couldn't find them. So I think the students also, it's the same thing for all of them also. It's easier said than done. It's not that easy, because if you have messed up a section which, you are supposed to do good at, because you are probably, you've been teaching that for so many years, then you carry that baggage into the 3rd section and you put that extra pressure. It happens with everyone, but I hope that, because we are experienced, probably we are able to deal a little better with it than compared to the students. Okay, so according to me, quant, I think cutoff would not be very different from the last year's cutoff. It would be slightly less than that. I think that 14, 15 marks, maybe 14 marks could be 85 percentile. 90 could be around 17 or 18 marks only, maybe 17 marks. 95 would be again around 21 marks. That could be 2 marks less than last year. 99 percentile could be around 30. 30 is my take. Okay, I know that, the first numbers we have come out with is 28. But I think that, 99 could be around 30, 31 is what I believe. So it would not be as low as 28. I think maybe 31. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is around 33 also. Because as we discussed just now, there were 7 to 8 easy questions. Now we are talking about the top 1% students here. So obviously they would have been able to identify those 7, 8 easy questions. And then if you manage to get those 8 questions in 20, 25 minutes, you could have easily got another 2 to 3 in the remaining 15 minutes. So I think 99, maybe it would not be 36 like how we have seen in the past, but it could be around 33. And at the lower end, I would say 31 is my take. I don't see 99 falling below 31. So what is a good score according to you and Nishant?
My take would be nothing but, if you take quant standalone, obviously 31 would be the thing. But because the first 2 sections were slightly tougher than what it was last year, so automatically the impact, as we all know, that we carry the baggage of that also. So I think it would be in the vicinity of 30 only, but 29 to 31 is my take. I mean, I would not say it will go beyond 31. This is what I personally feel like.
Last
29
year
to
it was
30.
34.
Yeah.
So one thing I think we would all agree to is that it is definitely going to be below that for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely,
So it
absolutely.
could be, yeah, as I said, I expect it to be around 31. Nishant sir, what is your take?
I also agree, sir. But my take is it should be lower than 30 this time, because last year the arithmetic questions were easy. This time, even the algebra questions, some people have fear of algebra. So some of the students, when they see fx, they call it fear factor. They don't attempt those questions, even if they are easy questions. Geometry was a trap there. That tangent question. So
Geometry, one
people.
of the questions was a repeat. Now, this is something
Oh,
which has started happening a lot in CAT. There
which
was a
one was
triangles
that?
question
Which?
where you draw a parallel line from one of the points where you are dropping, a line, and then this question has already been asked in CAT in the past. Maybe the numbers might have been different, but once you draw the diagram, you know that okay, this is a past CAT question only. So they've repeated that question where you get those similar triangles,
Okay.
right? So there was a
A lot
repeat in
of questions
geometry.
here, a lot of students here are asking for the answer of the boat question.
Boat was, it was 4 plus 4, 8 kilometers, the total distance traveled, basically 8 kilometer.
Okay, I think I got something similar. I don't remember, but yeah, it was, I
Yeah.
think, 4 or
And
8.
the coffee allegation question also. What was the answer? Was it 5 kg? Someone's asking.
Yeah, 5 is correct.
Okay.
5 is the
Okay.
correct answer.
Time and work, it was 340. Somebody's asking, so it was
Ha.
340. The
Time
answer
and
was,
work was
yeah, it
340,
was
yeah.
absolutely. And then we have
Manav
got
sir, can you comment on the that particular question we were talking about? I did it towards the end, so my recollection is a little hazy. I think I had some 4 minutes left when I came to that last RC, the science RC. So that instrument wale question, that's the one. There is one student, Arpit, who is repeatedly asking for the answer. Is it saxophone or milestone?
It was a very tough one for me, at least. I'm not
It
a
was
verbal
pretty
mentor, of
close
course,
there.
because
Yeah, I couldn't get
my
enough
my
time
my
to spend
logic
there.
was that the whole passage is based on the fact that with technological advancements, we are being able to measure
Yes,
things
yes.
more precisely. Now, first I picked saxophone only because I thought that there are no measurements involved over there. But then I thought that the way they design it, the notes would not sound correct if they are not precise measurements. Then I picked milestone. But then I thought that if you go to Gujarat, you travel by road, you will see that there are 2 sets of milestones. So they have put milestones, and then because they were wrong, they have put a black cross on that and then put another milestone. So,
True.
with
Yes.
more precise measurements, so I thought milestone also cannot be the answer. Then I thought that maybe microwave oven, it is cooking. What do we have to do with measurement? But then I thought that, okay, temperature, I want to set 100. What if it is 101? So with precision. So I couldn't figure out the answer to that. Just mark one of the options. But all the options, in fact, as an afterthought, I think that scalpel, according to me, is a better answer because those kind of measurements you're not making, according to me. So I'm not sure. You would
Mana
be a
sir, you
better
had a
person.
discussion regarding this with, I think, Sujit sir also, isn't it? So
Yeah.
maybe you can comment on this.
So, uh, um, today's discussion reminds me of the quote usually attributed to Mike Tyson, that everyone has a plan till they get hit in the face. So I think the DIR section was similarly, this particular RC was, kind of, at least for me, I found it very challenging. I lost track in the middle. I had to come back to it. I have chosen
Milestone, you said.
I've chosen the milestone as the
Yeah.
answer because I thought, a milestone, a more refined milestone doesn't make any difference, but a scalpel in a stone age, it might have been a sharpened stone. In the bronze age, it might have been something else. And now we might have a scalpel that is made of titanium and something. So I don't know. I'm prepared for both the answers to be wrong.
Ma'am,
So-
what answer did you pick for that?
No, I'm still not going to comment on that, sir, because that was the last thing that I came to, and this RC. So I barely had 3.5 to 4 minutes to, get through the whole thing. I was more busy noting down the question types, question stems, and all that. So I really cannot comment on that. Unfortunately, this should have been an RC. If I'd known that this question is going to be so debatable, I would have taken this first. But I ended up choosing the other 3 RCs.
I feel for the students who got this RC as their first RC of the first question. That could have
But
been
in terms
quite
of selection, I think this would have stood out as not the first one, sir. In terms of selection, I was very clear that they should be my 3rd or 4th RC.
Correct.
But because, literature draws us very easily, I easily got into that. And of course, the first 2 were the easier ones that I picked. So let's wait and see. In just a few days, we'll know what exactly it is or maybe you can even source out that RC and figure out what might be the correct answer.
I think by the 10th, we would definitely know once the
Definitely,
response
sir,
sheets are out.
Could even be earlier than that. I mean, going by
Usually
trends,
it's 7 to
already...
8 days.
Yes,
So
yes.
to be on the safer side, we can presume 10 days.
There are
So
more questions that
overall,
students are asking us. There is some domain set, is it? Wait.
Domain was half and I mean, it was half and 1. Basically, these 2 values were not possible in the domain. Rest all are basically. So the answer was that. Then one student, let me check the question. Hexagon, it was like, I mean, straightforward question was there. 5 to 24 was the answer for that. The hexagon in that we made a trapezium. I think, Pawan sir, yes. I mean, you did that.
I didn't.
Yes, it was 5 to 24.
Yeah. Okay.
What about the authors set in LRDI? Can someone comment on that?
I don't remember the answers. If you tell me the options, I can tell you which one was correct. I did attempt that set, but I can't remember the options.
Anyone else?
Specific question they have got, they can share the question and also the options. Then probably I can tell what was the correct answer.
So this is Vivan Joshi. Maybe if you have a specific question, you can post that. But Vipul sir, do you remember? Nishant sir, do you remember?
No, ma'am.
This set? No.
Unfortunately not. We don't remember the answer exactly.
It's just 7 days. Let's just wait and get ready for.
But it's not that easy, sir.
Not that easy for
a student.
students,
It's not that easy
Yes.
to wait for 7 days because after the slot, every test taker, they are asserting that their slot was the most difficult,
including us.
As mentors also, we'll say our slot was more difficult, and the other mentors would claim their slot to be more difficult. So
slot 3 is still going on. I have not seen slot 1, but I can confidently say that slot 2 was
more difficult, and this happens every year. So overall, we all agree to the fact that this CAT was definitely, irrespective of comparison with slot 1 of CAT 25, compared to CAT 24, this was definitely a more difficult paper.
Yes.
Maybe at par with the difficulty level, I would say, of CAT 23 and CAT 22. Okay, CAT 23 quant was a more difficult section than one would expect, but other 2 sections were not as difficult. So overall, the paper was not very difficult. So I think compared to CAT 24, certainly more difficult. And then I think at par with the difficulty level of 23 and 22, would everybody agree to that?
Definitely, I agree with that, sir. In fact, I think 23 is closer to VRC, at least is closer to CAT 23 in terms of the feel, also the way in which the passages, the language level, the variety, the way in which the questions were given, etc. Largely, I would connect it with CAT 23 more than CAT 22. Okay, 23 is what it is.
So in terms of difficulty, ma'am, how would you rate? Not in terms of difficulty, in terms of cutoff.
At least 1 notch higher than CAT 24. In fact, I would even peg it at 2 notches higher than CAT 24 slot 1. Slot 1 was quite on the easier side.
Slot 1 was very easy last year.
So definitely 1 to 2 notches higher, which is where we're looking at probably 40 plus maybe. So I really think 13 to 14 questions could easily be got right. Some 4 to 5 questions from your VA, about 8 to say 10, 11 questions from RCs, depends again on how many RCs you're going to do, but could have been done. Yes, there was some difficulty here and there. Some questions were challenging. It required you to think again. Options were quite close in a couple of the RCs. But nevertheless, our students are used to that. When you look at the SimCATs, we've given them a wide variety. In fact, the take-home SimCATs were a collection of really complex VRC sections. If I recall, that was a year when we created fairly challenging VRC sectionals in keeping with the trends of, the previous year. Our SimCATs, proctored ones this year, were more aligned to CAT 24. Of course, they represented the last 3 years, but in terms, there were sectionals that were really on the easy side. VRC could be done. And I think the 99 percentile scores were also indicative. I mean, we've seen scores go as high as 55, 56 and all that. It
So
is
for
even
overall, ma'am,
Yeah.
overall, what is everybody's estimate, like for 85
I think
percentile and 99 percentile?
I think 99 has been pegged at about 41
No,
for
ma'am, overall,
yeah.
all the three sections.
Overall, I may need to check. Sir. I
And
think we've
85, how
already
much do you think would be the cutoff?
overall cutoff.
Yeah.
I will still need to check that, sir, because I
Manav,
don't
sir,
know what.
your take on that?
16, 14, 15, something like that. 85 percentile might be at a score of around 50.
50. Okay, and 99?
See, I have here our prediction. Let's stick to that so that there's no mixed messages that we're giving to students. So our predicted overall percentiles are, just a moment. Yeah. 99.9 overall for slot 2 is 115. And it's a little lower than slot 1, which
That's
is 122.
123, I think, for slot
122. 122.
Yeah.
99.5 is 97 slot 2 and 103 for slot 1, which I think is absolutely right. Okay, the difference is fair enough going by our discussion, especially of DILR.
But we haven't seen slot 1 just. We only have feedback. So
yeah, we
we
have
have to presume
feedback,
that
isn't
that's
it, sir?
perfectly all right.
That I think yes.
Yeah.
99 is pegged at 90 for slot
83.
1.
I think they have put it as 83.
For slot 2, yes.
So
for
we
slot
all
2.
agree to that.
Close to that
this is
only.
what we think
Yeah.
should be around 83.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And even our 85 is pegged at 41, which is quite fine. 41 for slot 2, 45 for slot 1. 20
I think 85
VRC.
could be
Yes.
slightly higher than that.
45, 46 minimum. I mean, it should be like
Yes,
in the vicinity
yes.
of that only.
Yeah, I think
It's
it
always
should be
safer
slightly
to be
higher
a
than
little
that.
conservative, isn't it, sir? When you're, making predictions, I think it's better for us to be a little conservative than go overboard. Yeah. But I think, yes, this is what my gut feel of slot 2 has been. And from the feedback of slot 1, the comparisons made with CAT 23, I think we are just right with the predictions. I'm sure the community also might have to say similar things. We haven't really gathered anything from the rest of the community, test prep industry, isn't it? Yeah.
So what is your prediction on slot 3? Last few years, slot 3 has been the toughest slot.
Toughest one, yes.
So do you think that trend is going to continue?
I don't know if it's going to be the toughest one, but it is certainly going to be on the tough side. There are going to be at least 2 sectionals that are difficult, I think, because you have to incorporate the surprise factor, isn't it, sir?
My prediction is that, VARC and DILR is going to be tougher than the first 2 slots. We, of course, don't know just now. But I think quant may be slightly on the easier side.
I think
because we have already seen slightly tougher in QA, basically, in the slot 2.
Yeah,
that
slot
is the
2
reason.
was already tough quant. So I think that, slot quant would not be tougher than that. So probably, yeah.
All right, I think we should wrap this up, sir,
Yeah,
because in just some time, slot 3 will be out, and then we will have the analysis of that as well.
And we also have a comparative analysis at night when we are going to compare the difficulty level across slots. So in case you are interested in, comparing the other slots with your own slot,
Correct.
you
We do
can join for that as well.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, sirs, everyone, all of you. I'm also thanking the students who had a lot of queries posted and who were there with us. So yes, that's it, I guess.
And all the very best to everyone, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Everyone.
For the response sheets and
Exactly
the
right.
results. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Thank you.
chalo.
Thank
Yeah,
you, sir.
okay, yeah.
Thank you.